To look over our students' posters. I do want to reiterate something that Ms. Colvin said earlier. It really is a privilege to watch all of these students and all of the knowledge that they have acquired and learned and worked on throughout the year. So can we just real quick give a hand to our Block 1 students and their presentations? So we will now move on to our second section of presenters. Our first speaker for our second session is Ms. Ashley Bland. Ashley is a senior majoring in biomedical engineering and graduating in the fall. Here today to discuss the first generation student support experience, please welcome Ms. Bland to the stage.
Thank you. I was worried I had to stand on my tippy toes. Okay. Hello, how's everyone doing? Welcome back. My name is Ashley Bland, and I just wanted to thank you guys for taking the time to support myself and the other scholars in the presentation of our research. We all worked hard. So this year, the title of my research is From First to Last, Elevating the First Generation Student Experience. This research was conducted under the guidance of Dr. Bobby Berry from the College of Applied Studies. A lot of thanks to him, thank you. So this study's intent is to analyze the effectiveness of current first-generation programming at colleges and universities to inform initiatives at Wichita State University and create new and effective programming for first-gen students. So who are first-generation students? First-gen students are students whose parents or guardians have not graduated and obtained a college degree in the United States. This actually makes up about 56% of all of the undergraduate population of students in the United States. So these students often report high difficulty in transition, imposter syndrome feelings, elevated levels of stress and uncertainty, lower degree completion rates, higher student loan debt, and they're also statistically less likely to be academically prepared and more likely to lack a sense of community and engage in a paying job while in school. Schools are starting to notice this gap between student success, and so a lot of programs are starting to emerge, such as summer bridge programs, peer faculty mentorship, academic tutoring, first-generation honor societies, as well as various workshops that they think might help their skills improve. So to conduct this study, we first started with a literature review just to identify different programs and resources that currently exist. And then we selected various universities for analysis and comparison at Wichita State University. These schools fall into a peer institution category, aspirational institution category, or first forward institution, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. And then we identified several services and resources offered at each institution through review of their websites. And then lastly, we reached out via email just to get more detail about different resources that exist at each institution. So after reviewing existing literature, I found that known methods of assisting first-gen students through their transition fall into several categories. The first is social involvement. Through this, program organizers are getting students into the community, giving them advice, feedback, emotional support, and sometimes physical resources like school supplies. The second is creating a physical safe space. Physical centers create a safe space for students to feel comfortable asking questions, seeking guidance and feedback and emotional support. And then the third is early intervention and education. So this often takes the form of a summer bridge program, as I mentioned earlier, which often teaches asset-based teaching, which is used to inform students of their strengths instead of the weaknesses they're so accustomed to hearing. So after the literature review was the selection of universities, and earlier I mentioned peer and aspirational institutions. So this is WSU's list of criteria for selecting these schools. I did not have to select these schools, it's a compiled list already, but I wanted to make it available to you all. So basically, these peer and aspirational criteria are used as a comparison for WSU's personal objectives. Basically, they elect other schools who have similar priorities in research, serving and transforming their communities, and that have similar demographics to ours. I also mentioned membership within the First Scholars Network. The First Scholars Network originated in June of 2017, and essentially it's a community of universities that want to elevate, as I used in my title, potential and advanced outcomes for first-gen students now and in the future. So after setting the criteria for universities involved in the study, these are the institutions we chose. Out of these universities, Georgia State University is our aspirational institution, and the University of Memphis is the peer institution chosen at this time. We then sent out emails to individuals at the school related to So we then sent out emails to individuals at each school related to resources they provide, if they have a physical safe space or a designated student center, and what resources students use most often and how they create awareness to these students about these programs. So after reviewing each university's website, I found that every university that we reviewed had a TRIO program, whether that be TRIO Student Support Services or McNair, as you see here today. 5 out of 9 of these universities held celebration events specifically for first-generation students. Those universities were the University of Memphis, Missouri State University, Texas Southern University, Purdue, and Kansas State University. Out of these schools, the only school with a physical center was the University of Memphis, reflected in the top row. I'll focus mainly on them as they are our peer institution and offer each of the categories of resources. They have first generation events, a First Scholars Program with up to $20,000 in funding for each student, a TRIO office, a first gen student organization, a physical office for first generation success, as well as various scholarships and mentorship opportunities. Out of these universities, only 3 responded to our email requests for further information, but these schools were the University of Missouri in Kansas City, Texas A&M, and Kansas State University. At UMKC, they offered each of the types of programs previously discussed, such as tutoring, workshops, and peer mentorship, and each of these resources were available to all first-year students. But specifically for first-gen students, they are invited to apply to what's called the First Gen Roof Scholars Program. In this, they receive a book stipend, they get to move in early, and receive specifically a first-generation peer mentor, which they found to be very impactful. They meet with this mentor at least 3 times in the semester. They meet once in a small group setting, and they attend several first-generation related events and workshops. UMKC also has a physical office for first-gen students titled the First Gen Den. It's kind of a fun name that helps students feel comfortable going and asking questions and using that as their safe space. And so you can see in the table to the right, students that successfully completed the program on average in 2022 had a GPA of 3.31, while those who did not complete the program had an average GPA of 2.96. So obviously a lot of the initiatives that they're using are helping improvement tremendously. At Kansas State University, they offered a lot of similar programming, such as holding events, a first-generation honor society, etc. But they also have a first-gen office, which was recently able to establish an education abroad trip for first-gen students during spring break. Their Office of First-Gen Students serves as a hub for connection, community, and advancement of degree completion. A lot of students know they can come here with questions or just come to relax or work on schoolwork. A lot of collaboration across campus happens from this office as well. At Texas A&M, they also offer a first-generation student center. Out of this, they've launched a math learning center, designated counseling and psychological staff specifically for first-generation students. This was the only university I saw offer that, so that was a fun fact. They've also created a first-generation student orientation and created scholarship opportunities for first-generation students as well. They also do this while simultaneously offering many of the same standard practices that other universities and literature cite, like mentoring, first-gen honor societies, and bridge programs. So you might be wondering, how does this compare to Wichita State University? So as I said before, in 2022, about 38% of undergraduate students identify as first generation, and that number has risen closer to 50% through 2023. I believe we're sitting at about 45% right now in the undergraduate population. But despite this, Wichita State doesn't have a physical office specifically for first generation students. We do offer summer bridge programs like Passage to Success, the Spirit Strong Mentor Program, which pairs students with both a peer mentor and a professional mentor at Spirit Aerosystems. And WSU collaborates a lot with TRIO and the McNair office as well as the Office of Diversity and Inclusion and first generation student success, or not first generation, but student success. Wichita State, as of 2019, was also designated as a First Forward institution. So after reviewing all of the information, it seems as though the biggest improvement that WSU can make is offering that physical location for first-generation students to be able to feel comfortable to come to for questioning, whether that be an office, a lounge, a study space, just an extra space that are specifically for first-generation students to feel safe. It would create more staff and student jobs as well. And in literature, it has shown that significant improvement in first-gen success happens when a physical office designated to serve them exists. No matter what course of action Wichita State decides to pursue in the future, it's most imperative that WSU ensures that prioritization and evaluation of these students happens from a place of sincerity. A lot of times students can feel like a quota or a number for a university to check off. So the messaging behind the programming oftentimes matters more than the details of the programming itself. In future studies, it would be beneficial to conduct interviews with first-gen college students, specifically at Wichita State University, as well as interview professors and administrators. That is an outlook that is often under-supported in literature, but these professors and administrators have to support these students just as much as the program coordinators do, so their perspective is very important as well. And then lastly, I would interview alumni of first-gen related programming, such as the Spirit Strong Mentorship Program that I mentioned earlier, Passes to Success, and our very own McNair Scholars Program. So here are my references, and at this time, I am now open for questioning.
I've been doing work with first generation students all my life and was part of the whole conception of the first generation notion. But when you think about opportunities that are available to students who are first generation, what are the biggest things outside of a center? And I agree there needs to be a center. Would you recommend for Wichita State University? And how would you go about impacting that, considering I've been here 58 years and we have 12 TRIO Gear Up programs that serve first generation students? How do we go about this?
Yes, ma'am. So a lot of, I think, and this is from a personal, unprofessional opinion, of course, but Wichita State University has a lot of programs implemented that are helpful, but in terms of scaling them up to reach the number of students that they need to reach, that is our biggest issue, I believe. So that would be my main focus in the future on implementation of further programming, just trying to figure out how we can scale these programs up to reach more students. And then further, the advertising for these programs might need a little bit more priority as well. Just from an undergraduate perspective, I know a lot of these programs exist because I've been studying them, but before, like I was looking through Wichita State's website from the perspective of a first-gen student, and a lot of these were new to me even as studying these. So those are the two things that I would improve the most first before creating any new programs, honestly.
Since many of our first generation students are working full-time or are becoming online students, your research focuses a lot on creating a physical space for them, which is an awesome idea. But how do we support our students who are maybe not able to be physically on campus often enough?
That's a really good question. A lot of offices at Wichita State University already offer virtual options for their programming. So like, for example, the advising office, you can schedule virtual appointments, there's virtual walk-in hours, there's virtual meeting spaces. I think something like that could be effective as well as getting them into the community more. You know, you'll have a full-time job, you'll have limited amounts of time, but connecting to other first-gen students is really important, and we should really build that community here a little bit more as well. So that can be off campus, that can be on campus, but we should try to figure out how to bring people together eventually as well.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. Hang on, stay up here, Ashley. And we're also happy to have another mentor, Dr. Berry, if you could come up and be recognized at this time also. Can you get a picture of us?